Thank you for having me on.
My first question is, why should people vote for you? What makes you different from all other parties campaigning?
Well, I think there's two reasons why I'd ask people to consider giving me their number one vote. The first one is that when the party that I represent, which is Fine Gael, came into government, our country and our economy was ruined. We had seen hundreds of thousands of jobs destroyed. Our country couldn't raise any money for itself, and we were facing terrible difficulty. And because the Irish people now have gone through a lot of change, and because of decisions that my own party made, we've an economy that's now growing, and we've the potential to offer more jobs and better jobs to people in the future. And then the second reason would just be about myself. I'm going forward for re-election as a Dáil TD. I'm at the end of my first term, and in the 5 years now that I've been in office, I've been able to do things like work on the Public Accounts Committee, and I've now been a minister now for 3 years, including the last 2 years where I've been Minister for Transport, Tourism and Sport. And during that time I've been able to do things that I hope have made a difference to the country and to the constituency. And an example of that would be the fact now that we have the Luas coming to Cabra and Finglas, which is going to make a massive difference to the Dublin 7 area. And I'd be asking people to vote for me so I can continue with that work.
Young people are getting really interested in politics now.
Sure.
What do you plan on doing for them? Because they seem to be the ones that suffer kind of the most from it.
Yeah. I've always found young people very interested and engaged in politics. Always have. And particularly young people who are voting for the first time. I've always found them very interested and engaged in what's going on. And we saw a really great example of that during the marriage equality referendum, where lots of young people were involved in the campaign. But this is now my third Dáil election, and in every election I have always found young people as engaging in what's going on as any other part of our society. Now, in terms of young people suffering the most, one of the things you find when you're involved in politics is every different group that you talk to feels like they've gone through the most difficult time. But the really important thing then is how can we look to the future, and how can we better support young people than is happening at the moment. And I point to two things that we want to do. The first thing that we want to do is really improve the apprenticeship programs that we have, so that people have a better opportunity to gain skills and qualifications early in life. And then the second thing is to have an economy that's capable of giving jobs to people. Because everybody, when they've either finished up their apprenticeship, or finished up in school, or finished up in college, I want those people to have the opportunity of getting a job at home. And that's why having a growing economy that can give people work is so important.
Well, the unemployment rate seems to be dropping, but a lot of the people are leaving the country. So how would you get them to stay? Yeah,
it's actually a really interesting point. A lot of research has been done to look at who is leaving Ireland and why. And very interestingly, it showed that nearly 70% of people who were leaving the country actually had a job already here in Ireland, or the prospect of a job, but despite that wanted to go. Now, I went through that myself. I left Ireland myself for 7 years, and I worked in the UK. And I think, young people do want to see what it's like in different countries and have an opportunity to live abroad and meet new people and meet new cultures. But all that being said, I'd rather they either came home, or I'd rather we were able to offer them something that meant they didn't want to go. So what I'd be saying to those kind of young people is that the Irish economy and our country can now give them better opportunities than was the case 5 years ago. And that if they were to stay at home, we can offer them the kind of opportunities that you might now be able to find in Dublin, or in Sydney, or in Berlin, or in New York. And that's why this election is so important, because if we do try and continue with the work that's underway, we might have a chance of giving them that kind of opportunity.
How would you tackle the housing crisis at the moment? Because there's so many homeless people and children at the moment who have no place to live.
Sure.
But yet there's a lot of derelict buildings that could be used to house these people.
Sure. And if But there's no doubt about it now that in Dublin Central, the main problem that people do face is housing. Up to around 18 months ago, whenever anybody contacted my constituency office or looked to meet me, it was all about lack of work, about not being able to get a job, or if there was a job there, about it not paying enough. Now I get less and less of that, but what I get far more of is housing, rental accommodation, lack of social housing. The biggest way we will be able to fix that is by getting more homes built, because if you have more homes being built, they will become more affordable. But the problem is how long it takes to do it. Between lodging a planning application and building a home can take nearly 2 years for that to happen. And there's lots of construction work now underway within Dublin Central, but it's still going to take time for those homes to be available for people to move into. So what I would say to those people who are in that situation is that we're working hard to get more homes built. As more homes are being built, that's actually going to employ more people. And for people who are in rental accommodation at the moment, we've now changed the law that you can only have your rent changed every 2 years, and you have to get 3 months' notice before that rent can be changed. And hopefully that will give people a bit more certainty dealing with landlords than was the case in the recent past.
People in rental accommodation, at least they still have a roof. What about people who have little kids who are sleeping on the streets, who don't have money even for rent?
Sure. So in relation to that, if you look at the number of people who are actually homeless there across December, which tends to be the worst time of the year for people being homeless, the number of people who were homeless versus the previous Christmas went down by 47%. Now that still means there's too many people homeless, but it did go down versus a year ago. And the housing agency would track the people, the number of people who are actually without a home over their heads, would have said that it was around 80 to 90 people who were sleeping rough in the run-up to Christmas, which is the 80 to 90 people too many, okay? But what I would say to them is what has now happened is in Thomas Street, a new centre has been opened up that's providing 100 beds to people. It's good quality emergency accommodation. And the reason that has been opened up is I don't want anybody sleeping without a roof over their head or sleeping in our city centre. And they should be making now use of that facility, because we want anybody who is homeless to have an alternative bed, an alternative accommodation. And because Thomas Street has now been opened, it is offering that kind of support to people. But clearly we have to keep at that, because I don't want anybody in our city homeless.
Okay, thanks very much.
Is that okay? Well, thank you very much, and thanks for having me in, and thanks very much for organising this.